Hello, everyone, and welcome to CMO Therapy, a podcast that's hopefully going to help you to navigate your way through your marketing journey. Because let me tell you, I get it. Being a marketing leader is no walk in the park. In each episode, we are going to dive headfirst into the world of B2B marketing, where uncertainty, tight budgets, and fierce competition are just the beginning of the roller coaster ride. But guess what? You are not alone in this. Why go solo when you can tap into the powerhouse of insights from some of the most awesome marketing leaders in the game? And look, the title might include the word therapy, but we're not just talking about challenges here. We're tackling them head on. Join us as we deep dive into the nitty gritty, share war stories, and unlock secret strategies. Get ready for a no holds barred conversations because, as you know me by now, sometimes I have no filter. So if you're a chief marketing officer, a marketing lead, or just someone looking to up their marketing game, then I'm so glad that you're here with us today. And I am so glad to have Kathryn here with us today. Thank you very much for joining us, Kathryn. Would you like to give a little bit of an introduction to the listeners?
Of course. Hi, everybody. Hi, I'm Kathryn Strachan. So I started a content marketing agency 5 years ago, and I grew it from just myself to 32 people before I sold it and exited it. Today, I act as a fractional CMO to help brands raise their brand profile. A lot of these insights are captured in a book that I'm releasing in the next month, which is really exciting, called Scaling Success, Building Brands That Break Barriers. So my expertise is really about creating marketing strategies and content strategies that really help you to push through those barriers. And all of those insights are captured in my new book. I also host a podcast called Tech Marketers Uncorked, which is all about marketing in the tech world, and speak on international stages. I'm showcasing in Vegas and London and India all in the coming months. So it's really super exciting. But I do a little bit of everything, as you can tell.
That's super exciting. I really look forward to reading the book. So we were talking, Kathryn, before about this podcast and about what we were going to talk about, and you said something actually that just really struck a chord with me, which is that a lot of people start with this with the content strategy. They jump straight into the content strategy when they don't really have a kind of a marketing strategy in place first. It's something that you've seen quite often happen. And it made me think, about the kind of the title of this podcast, as we were sort of looking at different titles, but the title being this kind of not just Dear John, and the secrets of a really awesome content strategy. So why is it important to you? Why is it so important to look at that marketing strategy first before diving headfirst into that content?
Yeah, well, I think you can't even really create a content strategy without the larger marketing strategy. I used to see it all the time. When I ran the agency, I did a lot of the new business. So I would be, the first person that they might speak to before they became a client or, engage with the agency. And one of my questions was always, well, do you have a larger marketing strategy? Like, what does that look like? And they sometimes definitely did not. So they hadn't created a marketing strategy. They hadn't thought about ideal customer personas. They hadn't thought about any of their core messaging. They had simply thought, we need to increase brand awareness. Let's invest in content. And, content is great and it probably definitely will play a role at some point, but it's not the starting point. You can't create a content strategy if you don't have a larger marketing strategy, if you don't have a larger marketing vision, if you don't know that core messaging or who your audience is. You can't create a content strategy. The content strategy is really about how you communicate with your audience, but you need to know what you're communicating, who your audience is. You need to have like all these foundational elements in place before you can do that. My fractional consulting business that I now have kind of spun out from that because I was having so many conversations where there was a really clear need that they didn't have this marketing strategy and they did need somebody to come in and build it for them before they could really do what they had wanted to do. You see it a lot in brands where they want to jump straight into execution, and quite often it takes a couple of maybe 2 or 3 times of like falling on their faces before they realize that actually, let's get that strategy right first. It takes a couple of times of them trying something, whether it's paid or PR or, exhibiting at a big conference and not having a strategy in place and not getting the results that they want before they really realize that, yeah, you do need to put the strategy in place before you jump into execution.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true. So, I mean, let's kind of sort of dig into that a little bit then. So we have the we've defined who our kind of our target market is. We've defined our kind of core messaging. We have that story that we want to go out there and tell to the market. Like, where do we start with the kind of the content strategy side of it then? Like, what's the kind of what step one look like?
I mean, my step one is always about looking at the audience because, what you communicate and how you communicate it is really about how you're going to build a relationship with them. I mean, good content and good marketing in general is really about building relationships. So if you want to build a relationship with somebody, well, who are they? But where do they spend their time? Like, what do they want or need to know from you? All of these insights are really great insights for creating a campaign, but the campaign really needs to be personalized to who you're targeting. I mean, doing a big campaign across LinkedIn and with a downloadable ebook and white paper, is maybe great for like a CTO, somebody who needs more of that technical expertise. But it's probably not going to work for a small business owner. Small business owners don't have a lot of time on their hands, so they're much more likely to be inclined towards like video content or attending a Q&A where they might be able to get some of that like basic information or answer some of their burning questions without needing to hire a lawyer, invest quite a lot of money. So I mean, those two audiences are totally different. So the campaign that you create off the back of it is then going to be very different because what they need to know and how they want to consume information and where they spend their time online is different. So, whether you're doing it for B2B or B2C, it really needs to start with who that audience is. And that's, the best way to make sure that you are efficient and effective and spending your time and your money in the right places and doing the right things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you just said there actually about, I mean, it's, yeah, so true. Like, start with the audience and really understand who it is that you're trying to give that message to. Because I think so often that we think, okay, we have this story that we want to tell. We're going to put together this kind of ebook or what default blog that everybody kind of like goes to when they think about like creating content. We have this story, so I'm just going to deliver it to them in the form that I understand information best, which might be a blog or which might be an infographic or a video or whatever. We're not doing it for the sake of the audience. So, and you mentioned lots of different sort of types and formats of content there. So is that kind of how you would determine the format then, is really just based on the audience? And
Yeah,
then,
audience and best practices and knowing like what's going to work and wanting to get, a good mix in there. I mean, it's not a build it and they'll come kind of situation. I mean, you can create the best white paper in the whole entire world that anybody's ever seen, but if you don't tell people that it's there, nobody's going to find it. So, I mean, earlier this week, I was speaking to somebody about a new like potential fractional CMO role, and they sent me a white paper to like, ask my thoughts on it. My biggest thought was like, well, what did you do with this? Like, where did you promote it? Where did you share it? Because like, I mean, it looks fine. There's nothing like glaringly wrong with it in terms of design or copy or any of those things. But like, what did you do with it and what did it achieve were like my two biggest questions. So, I don't really care too much about the actual asset, as long as it's okay, it's good enough, it offers interesting, valuable advice, but there's a lot more that needs to go into it than just creating a good white paper or ebook. It's about what happens after you do it. How do you get it out there? Where do you send it? How do you make sure that, you get the eyes on it and that you get the eyes on it that you want on it?
yeah, absolutely. I want to come back to that because that's a really, really like big topic actually. I'm going to put a pin in that one for a minute, but just sticking on the kind of the formats of different types of contents and sort of how you're telling stories. Have you got any kind of like tips or sort of advice or stories actually that you've had from some of your clients then that that has worked really well when they've understood the audience in a certain way and the format of delivering that content?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different ways that you can deliver content. I always like encourage cross-channel thinking, and not even cross-channel, but like in person as well. I mean, this expands out really well to events and conferences. You know, you put a QR code on a slot on the final slide of a presentation that you're giving at that conference, and then that's a really great way to capture leads off the back of that talk. So, you know, one of my fractional clients, we designed a they do a digital loyalty index every single year, and you know that's our big hero piece. So we have to get creative with all the different ways that we create and promote it. I mean, one of the things that we did that was really effective was giving a talk at a conference and then having on the last slide a QR code where they could go from that QR code to go and download it. So we then were able to capture everybody who was in the audience's details. But it's things like that. You know, it's giving webinars to launch a report or hosting a roundtable dinner where you can, you know, either gather insights for a report or launch it all together. I mean, there's lots of really great spin-offs. We've even done spin-offs where like there was a mini series of podcasts that were recorded off the back of it. I mean, you're doing the interviews anyways most of the time for these reports. So, you know, that's a totally easy and valid thing to do off the back of it. But I mean, it's really about budget and resources and thinking about the audience and all these factors that go into it. I mean, I don't think that there's one right answer either. I think, you know, every single audience, every single brand has a different campaign that's going to work best for them. So, you know, there's lots of best practices when it comes to it, but there's not like, do this and you will succeed. And I don't think that that's ever really the case in marketing anyways. There's not like a I mean, I wish there was, but there's not just like one answer, and that one answer is going to get any brand under the sun the results that they want. Um, so yeah, I think it's difficult
Sure.
without knowing, you know, the brand context. But it's really about understanding the brand, understanding the product, understanding the audience, understanding the resources, and then like looking at it strategically to find the best way to promote it. But there's lots of really great creative ways to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, something you said there was sort of really interesting. And I think this ties back into what you said right at the start about having that marketing strategy and why it's really important. Because one of my favorite sayings, I feel like I'm saying this on like every podcast now, my team gets sick of hearing it, but is, you know, we're not short of ideas. And when it comes to like distributing content, you've just given us a ton of ideas there, which I love. Thank you so much. Which is things like adding the QR codes on the, you know, the presentation at the back, or, you know, splitting up a particular webinar or discussion into different like chunks or podcasts, or, you know, whatever. There's so many things that we can do with that content, but it will always come back to that, or has always got to tie back into that strategy, because otherwise we're just doing, you know, random acts of marketing kind of all the time, just pushing all of these things out across different channels, and we've got no way of measuring it, right?
Yeah. I'm not really a fan of random acts of marketing or sales requested marketing. It's probably another word for it. But yeah, I mean, you just get all these requests from all departments, from all stakeholders in the business to create a piece of content or, you know, do random act of marketing. And I mean, I always am asking, well, how like what is the end goal with this? Like how does it tie into our marketing? Is it something that we should focus our attention on? You know, is it actually going to get us where we want to go? I think as marketing leaders, you know, we're the driver in the car. So we can't have lots of distractions. We can't, you know, get distracted by the pretty view and run it off the road. You know, we have to keep it on the road and get it where we want it to go. And if we want to get to that final destination, you know, we can't get distracted. So, you know, being focused on that strategy on the road, you know, knowing what's going to help us go, you know, a little bit further with less gas in the tank, knowing, you know, when to step on the brakes or when to accelerate. But, you know, all of these external voices, you know, across different departments and even from agencies and, you know, the industry and all of these things, you know, there's 1,000 opinions, but it's really up to us to know which one is going to be the best and, you know, what we should listen to and what we should have as part of our journey. And I think, you know, whether it's content or marketing, that's a really difficult thing to do.
So like if we I love that. Like if we we do need to be in the driver's seat, but sometimes there is that, or some conversations I've had with marketing teams, there is a little bit of a struggle or disconnect really with kind of understanding that audience, because we're not customer facing per se, are we? We're not kind of in speaking like sales are, or like customer success are to customers every day. How do you what's your kind of advice on how we best get to know the audience, and kind of what they care about, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, we have to be having those conversations. So, we may not be new business, we may not be talking to prospects, but we have to be having those conversations. I mean, one of the easiest ways to do it is to network. So, I mean, network with people who are in those roles. For one of my fractional clients, I use my network and my community. So I'm part of the chief community, so that community, and also my LinkedIn network, to just reach out and like ask people for coffees. I mean, I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm not interested in selling anything, but you know, just ask them for coffee. Hear what they're up to. What are they thinking about? Like, what challenges are they facing at the moment? And just really be quite curious and interested in other people. I mean, you can do that by going to events too. So, going to a networking event and speaking to people in that room who, care about that solution. So, I mean, the fintech world has hundreds of events. There's an event like every single week. I mean, so you really have no excuse to not be speaking to them. And you have to be having these conversations to really understand the industry and what's going on in it and how you can create, valuable content off the back of it. So, I mean, I would say, actually, you don't have any excuse. You need to be having these conversations and you need to go out and create them. And, it doesn't have to be sales oriented. You don't even have to talk to current clients if you don't want to, though you should. Uh, you can just network and just speak with people who are in those roles, and find out, what their lived reality is like. But yeah, I mean, marketing can't just be, so introverted that we're never going to speak to anybody.
No, I love that advice. And it's something I really, really want to push, like for everybody, like all the marketing, sort of to not sit behind a desk or a screen, and really just get out there. And I mean, this is, you said about the kind of communities. I did a post about this morning on LinkedIn, but I mean, I honestly don't know what I would do without the communities that we're members of, because I just think they're amazing. But I had this situation literally just a few weeks ago where there was some sort of part of my some of the research that we were doing on the audience, I just didn't get around the job titles. And it was really bugging me. And it was something that in my head, when you feel like you're asking a really stupid question, you feel a bit embarrassed like asking it. But the great thing about having those communities or being part of that community is I didn't feel worried at all, or embarrassed about reaching out on LinkedIn or just picking up the phone to people and saying, I feel really stupid asking this question, but can you help me understand this? And my goodness, the response that I got back and the answers that I got back, where people were equally as confused, actually. So I didn't feel so bad in the end. But everything that I learned about their role, and just having that like 5 minute conversation, it literally just was a 5 or a 10 minute with some people. But it's gold, and anybody can do that, right? Anybody can just ping someone on LinkedIn, even if you don't know them. The worst they can do is say no. No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, that's literally the worst that's going to happen. But I think, I mean, you can't do marketing at all without a community. I mean, you need people to invite to the event. You need people who can be on your podcast or can be in your ebook or white paper. You need this network around you, but also from like a personal, professional perspective, having a network is a superpower. I mean, I think if you have a network, you open more opportunities for yourself, which, if you were to ever be made redundant, makes it much easier to find a role, or if you wanted to go on to a new career opportunity. But then, a lot of your speaking opportunities and, chances to get involved in things come via your network. So, I mean, I've built pretty much my whole career through my personal brand and through my network. So, I mean, I would really encourage everybody listening, whether, you're thinking solely about a content strategy or, or thinking bigger, that, make time to network, make time to, have coffees and chat with people and, just build a community around you so that, any of the challenges you face along the way, whether it's with content strategy or marketing strategy, you can solve.
Yeah. Definitely. And how would you, so, building out that community and having those conversations and getting that external kind of validation on your messaging is so, so important. But then as a marketing leader, you've got to take that back into the business. And often marketing leaders are in positions, I've had many a conversation before about this, but are in situations where they're talking to internal teams within the business, be it kind of like product or sales or customer success or the engineering, and the those kind of departments or teams are sort of saying, look, this is kind of the messaging that we think is going to hit. This is what the product does, this is the kind of the USPs, and this is the type of content that as a business we should be pushing out via our marketing channels. And then if you're hearing something kind of different from the external, from the people, that the audience that we're trying to reach, like how does a marketing leader kind of do that balance?
Carefully. Tends to be a bit of a negotiation. It depends on like how the rapport is with those teams as well and how much they're willing to trust you. I mean, if they're not willing to really trust you, sometimes it is like learning through error. So, okay, you think that this messaging is going to work. I know it's not, but you won't listen to me. So let's try this messaging and then maybe we can try mine and then we can compare them. And then you can see that mine actually works a lot better. So, I mean, it depends on how much they're willing to listen to you and if you can save them from falling on their faces. But sometimes people have to fall on their faces in order to learn how to walk. So, I mean, I'm always for advocating for, the customer and what you think is going to work as a marketing leader, because quite often, sales and compliance and all these other departments are lacking that perspective when you're in it like they are. It's really difficult to have an external perspective, and quite often, teams are too close to the woods to see the trees. So, they're thinking about it from their perspective and they're thinking about the things that they care about and they're too in it to really like have that external perspective. But it depends on like the internal dynamics, because it often comes down to relationships and like how much they already trust you and like you to be able to like let you do something that they maybe disagree with. Sometimes there's like a middle ground where maybe you're going to try like a mixture of the messaging, get their feedback, and maybe it's not the messaging that you ultimately wanted, but maybe it's somewhere in the middle, and then it's more of a breadcrumb approach to getting them, where you want them to be. Sometimes it's, a fall on your face kind of approach where you try their way, it doesn't work, and then you show them, what it should really be. And sometimes, you're lucky enough to work in a team that will just let you kind of run with it. I mean, I think that these conversations with internal departments are always really important. But how you approach them and, what you ultimately do at the end of the day with those insights tends to depend on like how the current dynamics are.
Mhm.
And, I mean, being the supportive leader, kind of helping to try to educate them or give them the insights so they at least, know it. But sometimes these decisions are out of your hands too. If a CEO comes in and says, no, we have to do it this way, you go, well, we should really, no, we have to. Okay, here we
Yeah.
go. So, you don't always get the say that you want. And, it's often about a negotiation.
Yeah, yeah. Pick your battles, like with your kids, right? Like
Yeah, you got to pick your battles. Yeah.
exactly. And I mean, this isn't another kind of interesting one, another sort of battle to kind of tackle or to talk about and tackle. But the other sort of battle that I hear quite often when it comes to content is the whole kind of quality over quantity discussion. I think there's we have to do the kind of the quantity part of it, and obviously there are, not just because of the wants and of the or the drive from the rest of the organization, but also for things like kind of SEO and stuff as well. We have to keep kind of up to date and keep things kind of regular, like fresh content going on our website. But yeah, how do you do you think that kind of brands now are sort of focusing too much on the quantity, or where are you seeing the quality win?
I think it really depends on, it really depends when you're determining what the quantity is, because there's best practices. So there's SEO best practices, like you mentioned. So like keeping content up to date, but also publishing regularly enough that like Google sees you as a thought leader. Then there's also like, if you want to rank for specific keywords, some keywords are more difficult than other keywords, so therefore require more resources and dedication to actually like getting you on page one for that specific keyword. Sometimes, you're in a really competitive industry where everybody else in that industry is creating like 10 articles a month. So if you want to go toe to toe with them, you're going to have to create at least the same. So how you determine quantity is really, there's lots of factors that kind of feed into it. And I mean, I think quantity is as important when it's defined in that way, is as important as quality. Because if you only do one really high quality article every 6 months and your competitors are doing six high quality articles every single month, then, you're never going to be able to get that traction and like compete with them on organic traffic, really. If you want to rank for a really difficult keyword, but you're only prepared to do one blog on it, then you're not going to rank for it. So, I mean, I think quantity is as important as quality when quantity is defined in the right way. So it's not just all of the content in the world, it's how much content do you really need to do to achieve that goal. And yeah, defining those goals and looking at that quite strategically. But you don't have to do, no brand really has to do all the content in the world to be able to get like what they want. And it's not unlimited quantity really when you define it. It's really more about balancing those different elements to determine how much content you actually need to do. But I mean, a good marketing mix, a good content mix should really have multiple channels in it. It's not just about blog content.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because what it comes down to, exactly what you just said, all of those points that you just touched on there. But again, it's coming back to kind of having that marketing strategy up the, right in place at the start. And then the content kind of feeding into that, but having the marketing strategy and then clearly setting the kind of the goals that you kind of want to achieve. Because, without that, you are just doing all these kind of like random things. Oh, let's kind of, look at kind of a little bit of SEO, or let's kind of produce more content because that's what we think we need to do. Just set the kind of the goals first, the strategy and the goals first. And I think like one of the other things that kind of made me think about when you were just saying that was, I think where it comes to things like the kind of the quantity is, I think there's a kind of a bit of a missing link between content and kind of ROI. And there's this kind of real drive for marketing leaders to kind of prove ROI in kind of everything that they're doing, every sort of aspect of their strategy. And I think that's where sometimes where the quantity part of the content comes in, because it's, okay, we're going to produce 100 blogs and this is kind of what the cost is going to be, but they're forgetting that kind of return piece. So like, or return on investment piece. So what's your kind of thoughts around measuring and proving kind of ROI of content? Like where's the kind of the link?
Yeah, it's funny because it's also like how you define content. Because blogs, for example, are one of the highest converting pieces of content you can not blogs, sorry, case studies are one of the highest converting pieces of content you can possibly create. And case studies are a type of content. So it really depends on like how you define that. I mean, when I create content in a content strategy, I like to think across the funnel. So you have like bottom of funnel, like an ebook or like a gated ebook or white paper where you might be able to download and, get the people's contact details, and then looking at like who is downloading them and if they're the right type of leads. And then can we nurture those leads by like inviting them to roundtables and engaging with them in other ways. Then there's things like case studies, which, are so valuable for the sales team, but, also for driving conversions over. Because by the time somebody comes to read a case study, they're not deciding if they have that problem or if they, if they want to invest in it, they're deciding, are you the right person for us? So we know we have this problem. We're now looking at multiple providers. Are you going to be able to solve that challenge? I mean, when you look at, tofu content, which is much more brand awareness, is much more top of funnel, which is probably the furthest away from like actual financial ROI. What you then start to look at is like organic traffic. So is it bringing the right traffic to the website? Are you ranking for the right keywords? I mean, for brands that are really like really needing to see ROI financially from like every element of marketing. One of the things you can do with like tofu content is there's lots of tools out there that help you to see like who's actually coming to the website. So like lead forensics is a tool that lets you see like what brands are coming to the website. So one of my fractional clients are every single spend needs to drive back directly to ROI. So being able to tell them, look, Starbucks, who's like one of their dream clients, was reading this blog,
Mm.
then makes them really happy. I mean, I'm personally on the fence a little bit when it comes to lead forensics about how I think about it, because I think it's a little gimmicky, but also makes boards really happy because you can show them like all of the brands that are coming to the website, which makes them really happy. So I'm kind of not totally sold on lead forensics, but there are things like that you can do for elements of content that are further away from like the actual conversion line. Um, yeah, but I mean, it's definitely a difficult one. It certainly helps to think about it as a journey and like tie elements of content together and to map it across the funnel. But I mean, I don't think the top of funnel should be neglected just because, a case study is going to be a higher conversion for you than, a blog article. I think you really need a mixture of all of them to have a strong strategy. So, I mean, I see major red flags when brands only want to do things that are going to drive conversions tomorrow. Because, I mean, that's not really marketing.
Yeah, yeah. I have a question, last question for, well, actually, last question but one for you. And I'm going to do like a zoom in, zoom out type of thing. So, zooming in first, what's your kind of what's in your experience, what's the most kind of like underrated um part of like a content strategy that many marketers kind of really sort of overlook, or maybe they overlook too often? So that's the zoom in. The zoom out is what's the most underrated kind of part of the marketing strategy that marketers overlook, would you say?
I think underrated for, well, it's not underrated, but I think the hardest thing to actually do is to build like executive profiles and personal brands for company leaders. And I think a lot of marketers do know that it's important, but really struggle to get the executives to either do it or to at least agree to do it. But I think that that's probably one of the biggest impacts because people buy from people. So when you can build a founder like that, when you can build, a CEO or company leader like that and like have a front runner, it's a massive game changer. So I think that's probably like one of the biggest impact levers you could probably pull. I mean, when I talk to a brand new brand who hasn't done or hasn't really invested properly in marketing, I'm looking first at the website. Is the website like in a strong enough foundation to strong enough place to act as a foundation? And then I'm looking at social. I think social is massively untapped, um, even though it shouldn't be, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
I mean, I think when it comes to like the marketing strategy, I think a lot of CMOs and marketing leaders don't get enough out of partnerships. I mean, I see partnerships as like a massive gold mine. Both like, your existing technology providers or people who you may already have relationships with, as well as like going out and creating partnerships and relationships with people who serve a similar audience, but in a different way. I think it's such like a super powerhouse if you can create that kind of referral scheme, but it's not even just about referrals, it's about being able to co-host events or to share resources or, be able to have those sorts of relationships. And I think not many brands think about partnership. They don't actually think about that as part of their strategy. If they do, it tends to be more closer to sales rather than like the overall marketing.
Hmm.
They're not thinking about co-hosting an event. They're not thinking about like um, co-writing an ebook or white paper. They're not really thinking about partnerships in like co-collaborating on marketing initiatives. They're more thinking about like how can we sell into our partners and have our partners sell for us. And I think partnerships and relationships around the brand are like one of the biggest areas for opportunity. Yeah, that is massively untapped most of the time.
I love that. I love that advice. And you know what we're always looking for is to kind of broaden our reach, right? That's kind of what you have to have in the back of your mind is like, how can we, be a little bit kind of selfish? We've got, within our own house, our audience that are in front of us at the moment in our CRM or, in our kind of social channels. But what we're always looking to do is broaden our reach. So I think, yeah, looking at kind of social media or partnering
Well, that's
with
exactly
other,
what partnerships allow you to do. I mean, partners should be like brand advocates. Like
yeah,
they should be like shouting about you from the rooftop. But yeah, I mean, a lot of brands don't think about how or like know how to leverage that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good opportunity if you can get it right.
Thank you. We've come up to time now, but I do have one more question, and that is so what I do with every episode is I ask on LinkedIn, my network, if I was talking to, or if you had an opportunity to ask one question to a marketing leader, what would it be? So I have a question for you. Sorry for the little bit of a surprise,
Oh,
but
okay.
it's a good one actually. It's a very relevant one for
That's
you.
good. I thought I was going to have to think of a question. I was like, what question would I ask? I don't know. So, okay, this is easier.
Maybe
This
you
is
can.
easier because I can just answer.
So the question is, it's a good one for you actually, and this is totally by chance that this question's come up.
Did they
But
know it was me?
no, 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 they didn't. So it's just if you had a marketing, yeah, if you had a marketing leader in front of you right now, what would you ask? But this question is it okay to use AI to produce content?
Oh, sometimes. Yeah, sometimes. I mean, it depends on what you're creating. So, like, I sometimes use AI to do like a presentation. So, like, I'm giving a training on the LinkedIn content. Like, I know what I want to talk about, but like, I don't necessarily have this presentation already created. So, I briefed AI to create that presentation. Then I went back and like tailored asked it to expand on certain elements, added my own elements to end up with my presentation at the end. I'm obviously going to be talking over that presentation. So a lot of the flavor and like the personality comes from me, but it saved me 3 hours of work. I mean, it can do a really good job at like repurposing content. So, like, if you give it a blog article that you wrote a long time ago and you ask it to update it with these specific things, or you ask it to update it for a new industry, it can do a really good job at that. Do a really good job with like basic emails. I mean, if you feed it a bunch of information, it can even do like press releases. I mean, press releases are pretty formulaic because they need to follow a specific format. And, if you feed it the right information and then, read it back through and tailor it and alter it, it can work for that. So, I mean, I think AI, you can use it for a lot of things. How I tend to think about it is like, how much do I care about the end result? Like, does this press release need to be the best press release that was ever created? If so, don't use AI. If you can get by with like a B mark, then use AI. So if you don't like, I mean, sometimes we're creating pieces of content as like a marketing leader. So like a homepage for a website, like don't use AI because that's probably one of the most important pieces of content in your whole entire remit. But like the outline of a blog article, like, no, that doesn't really matter. I mean, what's going to matter is the end result. So use it to do the outline, you do the rest of the content, and you have a good article. Or do you're really short on time, you want to put out like a social media post, it's probably not going to be the best, but it's better than not doing it at all, then use AI. So, I mean, it's really a balancing act of, how important does this piece of content need to be? What's going to be the repercussions if like it doesn't get created at all? And, do you need to do it or can you have somebody else do it? So I almost see it as like delegating, when I, as a marketing leader, I don't currently have a marketing intern with my consulting, but like I have a marketing manager. So there are like things that I would give them, and there are things that I would give AI. So if you thought about AI like a marketing intern, like, you're probably not going to ask the marketing intern to do like the end of year board report that's going to determine your whole entire budget for next year. But you might ask them to do the social posts and do the same day. So, I mean, if you're prioritizing your workload and thinking about, what's going to be the most important, what needs to get done, and then giving AI, the things that are perhaps lower on that list that are not as important, but maybe still need to get done. That's a good way to go about it. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not in a no, never use AI, but use AI in the right ways and in the right format, and be aware that you're not going to get the best mark, but sometimes it's better to get a C or a B than to get an F because you didn't do it at all.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, rather than spending 3 hours of your time on that presentation, just having something that you can start from and then add your flavor to it. Like that's, I think, yeah, the best advice, really. It's a good starting point, isn't it, for everybody? Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, AI will get you most of the way there, but you do need to finish it off a lot of the time.
yeah,
You can't
exactly.
trust it completely. It does like to make up stuff.
It's
But
not
it's
there.
like having a marketing intern. Like, marketing interns get stuff wrong too.
No, exactly. And you have to build trust. And everybody has to kind of build trust, don't they, with people. So even though it's
Yeah.
not a thing, but anyway. But no, I think it's sort of a little bit of a almost like a dirty sort of like not dirty word, like a I think people sort of tend to feel a little bit ashamed for kind of saying it, don't they? I use AI. I use AI to exactly in the same way that all you just
It's like every day. I use it to
described.
respond to emails that I don't really want to respond to. I use it to like write presentations that I'm then gonna, talk over. I mean, I use it pretty much every day. And it's really useful. I mean, it can be a really good starting point for like research as well, because rather than reading like 10 different blog articles, just ask ChatGPT like, where can I find more information on all these things? And it will tell you, or like, if you have a big question, and you don't know where to get the answer, I mean, ask it that as well, because it will tell you and like at least give you a steer, give you a starting point. And, you should definitely go verify any of the facts that it gives you, but it gives you like a good base to start from. I mean, just because you've read it in a blog article doesn't mean that, you should take that for fact either.
Yeah, exactly. That's brilliant. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and yeah, thank you for joining. And I hope the audience have learned a lot, or as much as I have. Thank you very much, Kathryn.
No worries. Thanks. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Bye.